Well, Joe's Joe.
Well, could have been golfing, there, it's nice enough, huh?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. That was almost at your house.
Really?
Couldn't remember. Years past, we had. So, yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, all kinds of family.
Wow, that's shocking.
Yeah, I know. No, it won't. For sure not.
Well, Skip here, here. I was gonna say, we got a coffee cup, we got.
Full Central Hills will be there, right?
Somewhere in the school.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got your email. I did. Yes, it
Okay,
is.
good.
And it's bad on me. I know you're all bad.
It's okay. There's a seat here.
Okay.
We got one.
You can have my seat.
Now, we've been over that, and not on my own.
I'm gonna put it there. Custard.
That'll get you.
I don't know, something along the line.
I think it's 10:30 or 17:34 or something like that.
On the east side of the high school. Can't miss it. Smell the new asphalt.
Paint's still drying.
How are you today? Yes. Nope.
Maybe you can.
Sure.
I'd like to thank you for coming.
He's checking to see if they move on.
Jess, we're live.
Thank you. Start? I think so. Okay. We're gonna go ahead and start this meeting. Hopefully Amber will show up in the next few minutes. So we'll start with the pledge of allegiance. The flag is back here. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Terry has informed me that we have our live YouTube streaming, so if you have anybody in your areas that want to listen in, they can sure join our YouTube channel.
The sound?
Hopefully.
So far.
Let's see, we need a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Travis, Keith. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And we'll just move right on to legislative remarks and priorities. Did you have an agenda you wanted to start with?
I think there is an agenda, but I think.
Well, I mean, listed.
Yeah, on the agenda, I think right now, just, if we could just do some introductions, so everybody knows who's in the room at this time, and then we'll go ahead and start it off with Representative Wagner going ahead and sharing some comments with us on the front side of the room. So who'd like to start? Sarah?
I would like to start. Hello, I am Sarah Wedge. I am business manager here in Custer. Terry Reynolds, business manager as well.
Sarah Barrick, board member here in Custer. Brandy Terra, board member here in Custer.
Keith Rendell, board member here in Custer.
Trish Ladner, representative District 30.
Woo!
Jeff Barnes, president of the board here in Custer.
Tim Frederick, superintendent, Custer.
Travis Hartshorn, board vice president.
Shane Miller, board, Edgemont.
Amy Furley, superintendent at Edgemont.
Sean Pitts, business manager, Elk Mountain District.
Lisa Pitt, superintendent, Elk Mountain Schools.
I'm Bobby Ladner, I'm the driver.
The chauffeur.
He's my chief strategist.
I'm Blake Gardner, superintendent, Hill City School District.
I'm Esther No, I'm with the Custer County Chronicle.
Debbie Roth, I teach high school science in Hot Springs. Rhonda Frederick, I'm the special services director here in Custer.
And I'm Joey Kortmeyer, and I'm the elementary principal here in Custer.
And there's Amber, just in time to introduce yourself.
The last time I was in this room, it was the band room, so. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Amber Holz. I'm the state senator for District 30. I'm from Hot Springs originally, but I'm happy to be here in Custer with the Wildcats.
Thank you very much for
Yeah,
coming.
absolutely.
We just started and just did an introduction, so
Awesome.
thank you.
I know we do have representation too from Hot Springs. Superintendent Kylie contacted me. She's got a sick kid tonight at home, so she should be watching online hopefully. And I think other than that, I think we have everyone from our schools going here for District 30.
I believe so.
Yeah, so if you guys would just want to start off with an introduction and tell us a little about yourself, we'll go from there.
Like I said, Trish Ladner, District 30. We live about 4 miles outside of Hot Springs in the county. This will be my 6th year, the end of my 3rd term. I've spent the last 5 years primarily working on property tax issues. I've gotten some good grassland legislation through for ag and property tax for the elderly, freezes, and disabled. You know, and we popped those values a couple of times, so that makes me feel good, because now I think it's doable, but I'd like to pop those again. I just pride myself in being the voice for District 30. I don't have an agenda. My agenda is to represent all of you and the constituents here. And you might be, surprised that I will call you. I will ask you as bills come up, your input and what you think and your expertise. So I just count it an honor to serve District 30.
And you will just out of the blue one day get a phone call from her. And she will say, what do you think? Where are you at? So it will happen.
Yep.
She has your number, she will use it.
And aren't you?
Guess that leaves me. Well, like I said, I'm Amber Holz. I grew up in Hot Springs, went to school there K through 12, so I'm a product of the public school system and proud of it. I went on to the University of South Dakota and then on to law school out in Washington, D.C. I work for an election law firm now, so that's my day job, which keeps me rather busy and sometimes kind of all over the country depending on what litigation that we're working on. But that said, this will always be home for me. And so my intention, even as a young person, I went off and did all of that so that I could come home and serve this community, because I saw a huge gap in the ability for this community and communities around the state, really, that are rural areas, to have proper access to justice and legal services. And so I wanted, especially in the legislative and governmental space, to get a background in education so that when I had a seat at the table like the ones that we're all sitting at, that people would listen to our community, especially given how rural our area is. We often are voiceless and not really taken seriously. So that was kind of the whole message behind my life, even when I was in middle school and came to this very room to be in middle school music contests and everything else. And then last year was when I ran for the legislature, and it was a big a lot of rhetoric going on in this community that we had kind of lost our voice. And so it was very fitting that my campaign was always, or my dream was to come home and be a voice for the community. And it was kind of fitting that at that time there was some rhetoric about there being a lack of a voice. And so this last legislative session, even though I was a freshman, Trish and I worked together to kind of fight the beast on property taxes. So that's something that I'm very passionate about, and I've learned a lot from the woman sitting right next to me, and I'm really grateful that we have a good relationship between the members of the legislature. I know Tim's not here tonight, but I think the three of us do a good job of working together and have a good working relationship across the chamber, which I don't know if that was really there before. And then, you know, the other things that I'm really interested in obviously are more of the, you know, governmental election law space and things like that. 'Cause that's, you know, my background, I guess. But that's also something that's really important for you all with municipal elections and school board elections and things like that too. So I have been working with Sarah Frankenstein to potentially update some of the election code when it comes to municipal and school board elections. That's something that might be relevant to you all, that you probably will be getting a phone call from me about if you've had any issues with kind of dealing with those statutes, because there's some confusion there. But between that and property taxes, it keeps Trish and I pretty busy, and that's what my main focuses will be, given that I'm on Judiciary Committee and the Taxation Committee.
Thank you.
So I'll start off with a quick question. This isn't directly related to education, but so we had a group of legislators and others that formed a task group this summer, right? Where was the representation, or maybe I should ask, was there representation from District 30
No,
on that?
the task force was appointed by the leadership of the House and the leadership of the Senate and Governor Roden. So I wasn't on the task force, Tim wasn't in it, it was Amber, which we took kind of exception to because we have spearheaded tax for so long. However, having seen the results of the task force, I'm pretty pleased that my name's not on it. So just saying. So we'll get a lot of work done. There's time to do it and the heart to do it. But I gotta tell you this, if we have 21 property tax bills again this year, nothing's gonna get passed again. So we need to consolidate as representatives and senators and jump on the same bandwagon for the people. A lot of our bills were killed last year because they wanted to campaign on property taxes. And I think that's deplorable. That's inexcusable. That's not putting the people first. So could be why I wasn't on the committee. I kind of made that well known. So you don't campaign on people's lives. So
I'll provide a little bit more color to that too, because I think that for all of you, it's very important to understand the political dynamics going on, especially as 2026, we're going to see a lot of more political gamesmanship being done, especially on this issue because of the governor's race. And so, I mean, I'm very happy to share amongst friends here kind of what's really going on. And so, you know I wasn't on the task force, and the governor's not very happy with me because I went against him with my property tax bill. And was seen as kind of a freshman legislator that went rogue, and quite frankly was more successful than the governor, to the point where he had to be on the floor of the House lobbying against a bill that would have done a lot of good for this community, that was then amended to, you know, essentially a different version of what I ever proposed. And so it got really messy in the legislative session. In addition to that, you know, we've got leadership that many of which are involved in different campaigns themselves. And so they don't want a freshman legislator either to be successful, because that kind of usurps their power as leaders. And so there's a lot of more personal dynamics that, as Trish said, get in the way of the good of the people, that are very, very frustrating, because it shouldn't matter if a 26-year-old female's name's on the top of the thing or a 57-year-old male running for governor. It really doesn't matter. And so I really hope that this legislative session, that we do a better job as legislators to come together, I guess, and coalesce, because the task force, like Trish said, first of all, none of us were on it for political reasons. And then second of all, they came out of it with the same bills essentially that were from last legislative session. There's a couple ideas that are kind of new, but otherwise it's the same 20-some-ish ideas that were essentially killed before. And so I'm really disappointed because the idea of having a task force, and I'm sorry, but the purpose of leadership is to get everybody to come together and put together a package that everyone can agree on. And it's just it's tailored all the time. So anyway, my goal is that we can hopefully get together with the legislators like Jameson and some of the other folks from the other side of the state that have ideas and maybe put together a bill that has little pieces of everyone's idea put together in one package that multiple legislators can get behind, that maybe leadership or a committee will sponsor or something. So it isn't one individual person's name on it, or even, I mean, hell, if the governor himself puts his name on it, it's the governor's bill and he gets the credit. I really don't care who gets the credit anymore. I think we need to live by the saying that there's no amount of good that you can do if you don't care who gets credit, so.
Thank you.
It's a long way of saying no.
It's an honest
Well, and I
answer.
think that's a really good segue because I'm part of we have an executive board with our superintendent's group, and I know you take exception because you weren't invited to the table. But I would ask, as this conversation continues, that, you know, a lot of the lifeblood for school districts is property tax funding. And as that reform takes place over this session, that you would solicit some feedback from educational leaders. And, you know, we're very sympathetic to the tax burden. Like, we are aware of that, but we also want to make sure that we don't go backwards in the process. So I think there's a solution out there, and it just requires collaboration, but apparently did not happen over the summer. But as that session goes on, I just ask that you would keep us in mind during that process.
Absolutely.
Because we're not here to fight you, we're here to help you on
Well, we're a team, right? And when it's about our kids, and our kids are our future.
And that's one thing that's really interesting is that, especially this area doesn't do what I think a lot of the schools in the Sioux Falls districts are doing. And there's a lot of really nasty rhetoric from the Sioux Falls legislators about some of the opt-outs and things that I'm not a school person, but there's a lot of property tax ideas that are trying to limit and suppress schools, because I think they are in some ways doing bad things or acting as bad actors on the other side of the state. Whereas here we have a completely different problem where, you know, we're having to raise all the money locally. And so I don't know, it's difficult because the problems across the state are different, but contributing to the same output, which is high property tax burden. And so you guys get demonized when you're not the bad actors, where there are some other schools in the state that I don't want to call them bad actors, but maybe you're, you know, opting out more than they should, or, you know, reacting to the growth in a way that maybe could be done in a more economically feasible way or something. But again, I'm not a Sioux Falls legislator, and that's not my stance. Is I think you guys do a great job here, and I hope that their ideas in Sioux Falls don't hurt us here in District 30.
The hard part is they have the population of the votes.
Yeah.
So this is our district has to coalesce too and come together as a team in a louder voice, but it's really important. I just think if we hold that as a priority, our children, I've testified on the floor that we in District 30 are the poster children for integrating homeschool and public schools. We bring the kids in, you know, some you have to take 2 classes, some you don't have to take any, you can participate in band, and they wanted to make this big law. And I said, well, why do we need a law when it should probably be a local policy that you incorporate? But we truly are the poster child in a lot of aspects of education. And what a lot of people don't realize is that it's in our Constitution, the property taxes have to fund K through 12. So any property tax bill that comes up, they have to supply replacement, predictable replacement funding without changing the Constitution that says that has to be funded by property taxes. Unless you want to do a constitutional amendment like former Senator Freimüller is trying to do. And people don't like messing with the Constitution, and I'm glad they don't, because there's a lot of holes in that amendment that they're presenting, and I could go into it, or I could just send you my paper. But, yeah, I just think that as an area, West River, we have to get all our voices together to even halfway compete with Sioux Falls. because Rapid City has numbers. So eventually, if we don't, the votes are gonna come favoring Sioux Falls area or favoring Rapid City. So it's just something we have to think about moving forward, and how do we knit that coalition together? Where we stand strong, it's like saying there's 21 property taxes, it's not gonna, programs, it's not gonna go anywhere. Well, if we come out divided 21 ways, we're not gonna go anywhere either. So, that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Do you feel there's a collaboration in the smaller communities, whether it's East River, West River, to have that same voice?
Not yet, but I think they're starting to talk about it because they're realizing that their values aren't being represented, and it's not because of the representatives and the senators, it's more about the numbers. You know, I'm not a politician. I'm somebody I figure that stepped in to work for you. I don't have a politician attitude, but a lot of them do. And so they'll see, well, if I take this step forward, which might benefit the smaller communities, these people with the numbers are gonna hit me, or come against me, or recruit against me, or, you know, so there's that dynamic going on where the smaller cities are going, and towns are going, we know what we need. How do we accomplish that together? So I think we can grow that voice. I really do.
And on the issue of property taxes, one thing that I think is really interesting that makes this even more divisive is that the middle of the state doesn't really want to talk about the school funding formula and property taxes because they get more state aid for their schools. And so they don't have high property taxes because of the school funding formula like we do. And so they don't really want to come to the table and talk about it because it's kind of the elephant in the room that the smaller school districts in the middle of the state are donor recipients of the money that we should be getting here when we're getting $0 of state aid. Which, not that that's unfair, I don't disagree that school districts that need it, that are struggling, you know, that they shouldn't get state aid, that's fine. But when it gets to the point where you have one school district getting so much to stay open because they need a school and the next one's 45 minutes away or an hour away, I get that, but also we have a school right here that's getting no state funding, and look at the millions and millions of dollars that we contribute to the state coffer, and we don't see a dime of that back. So that creates some interesting discussions too, because you've got Sioux Falls that says our schools are opting out all the time, we hate our schools, we hate our schools. We've got the middle of the state saying we don't want to talk about it because, you know, we're getting as much money as we want and need. And then we've got us who, you know, want to look at the formula and take a good hard look at it again because it's unfair. How do you get all three of those groups to coalesce when the votes even are weird in the legislative political process? And the governor's race, it's very complex.
Well, one thing I have to remember too, and along with the constitutional aspect, people don't quite realize that there are 2 buckets. One bucket is property taxes and one bucket is sales tax. Property taxes go back to the county, no part of the state. The sales taxes go to the state to go into the general fund, to pay for their programs, to go for ongoing one-time projects. So the money that you pay in your property taxes goes back to your county or your cities or your municipalities. So what they're paying in does come back to them, but that then balances out. Like if Hill City or if Custer, their property taxes meet, here's 100%, and their property taxes meet 50%, then the state backfills in to make you 100%. So it depends on where you fall within that formula, but they'll always backfill you to 100%. Unless you make too much money like Mr. Gardner's district, so. Yeah, so that's just to know too, is that those are 2 separate buckets of money and they don't intermingle, they don't commingle.
I think that there's something that, you know, whether it be Hill City or a Custer School District, Lee Deadwood, Agar Blunt, Oneida, I think I'm missing one other, but I think also what has to be looked at with that, with the funding formula, you know, the old Gabriel Act that put it at 53-47%, you know, that's all over the place, as you mentioned, across the state. But with that being said, it is, but some of those schools that are receiving 70, 80% state aid, we also have to remember they're also receiving piles of federal assistance through title dollars. You know, so for school districts like ours out here that are not receiving that much title money, we depend upon not only what we're gonna receive in our, you know, local, because it's all local,
Mhm.
but above that, because we aren't capturing as much title dollars.
You know,
And that's not considered in the formula. And also, the other thing that's not considered in a lot of these proposals that we are seeing that I am fearful of is that, okay, once you say we're gonna put a bucket of money with a 2% increase in sales tax or $1.50, whatever it is, that you're gonna raise this alternative funding. We're not gonna debate how we're gonna get this money. Let's just say the state now has a bucket of money that exists that's supposed to go to the local areas for property tax relief. Well, how the heck are you gonna distribute that in a way that is also neutral and fair? And are we still gonna end up with nothing in our hands? And no one's really been able to answer that question, that have all these grandeur ideas of how they're gonna raise the money, because it's already a fight of just how you get the money in the bucket. No one has even gotten to the step of then how do you properly distribute that and how does it affect that formula that's already kind of broken, in my opinion.
in the formula proposal, they say that, how do we say, that you have $1.50, if you spend over $15, you get $1.50 receipt tax, that transaction tax, it's a tax. And if you spend under 15, you pay 10%. So if Johnny goes in and he buys $10 worth of candy, he's gonna get $1 plus the 4.2% sales tax on that purchase. Okay, so say they get enough, they're not gonna get enough, because there's 900,000 close to people who live in South Dakota. Every single person, grandmother, grandfather, baby, toddler, 10-year-old, would have to 3.72 receipts per day to replace the income that we need for our schools. That's not gonna happen. A family of 4, well, you need 29 receipts a day. So, yeah, and then it's given the legislature the ability to raise that $1.50 every year if they want to, a maximum of 5 cents, with no cap on that. So that can keep going up.
And again, there's no proof as to how you get that distributed properly to the schools that need it most. And,
Well-
and that's kind of where I'm at with all of those proposals, which is why I actually kind of like the governor's bill that keeps it as a county tax. But I don't like that it's a limit, that it's limited at 0.5% for the counties. I think that if you're gonna give the county the power to tax to do that, give the county commissioners the power and say, okay, Custer County Commissioners, now it's your job to determine for your county how much or how little you need, when you want to impose this, what you want to impose it on. And then the middle of the state that doesn't want to touch anything, good, don't touch it, Agar, Blunt, Oneida School District in whatever county that is.
Sally County.
Yeah. And then, you know, Fall River County, if we don't need as much because our property taxes aren't as bad as Custer and Pennington County, then we can just do the 0.5% because the Fall River County Commissioners are super conservative. And then the, you know, Custer County Commissioners here, if they really want to eliminate property taxes and they want to impose like a super high sales tax on something that tourists use a lot during the summer for the 3 months during the summer, then let them do that. But like that more flexibility so that across the state for this quilt patchwork of weirdness that is creating this problem, maybe that's the solution, because then that money would stay, again, just like how your property taxes stay local, you would be able to track how much each county is offered back. And then the question becomes like within a county, when you have multiple school districts in a county, then how do you distribute that money to the school districts? But again, I think that's a better problem than having to statewide distribute, you know, $200, $300 million in a formula that's already not really distributing the money in a way that's necessary. So that's kind of where my brain's at this point.
Just going back on that, doing the research and meeting with LRC, the legislature is going to devise the formula by which counties will be paid. There might be a state board that is formed, and it'll more than likely be on income and need, population and need. So if that's true, Sioux Falls is going to get everything. They have more population, more need.
So in other words, they would follow the same formula as
Well, we don't
basically
know
the
yet.
School of Public Lands.
We don't know.
You sell Star Academy for $3 million, every student is supposed to get X of that is across the state, but obviously Sioux Falls has 10 times our deal, so
So we're looking at that again. in the
even though our
distribution.
county sold it, they just get it, so they're gonna, gotcha.
And when you have, you know, current leadership, if you look at like what all these committees have been run by, at least right now, if you pass a bill that's doing that, think about what several of the summer study committees, who they've been run by, mostly legislators from Sioux Falls. You also have to look at that too, of who's in leadership right now. You know, most of the concentration of everything that's going on is coming out of Sioux Falls power. If we've got, you know, Dusty Johnson as a governor, you know, East River's gonna win. I mean, even, you know, Larry's got a lot of people in his administration that are all Sioux Falls folks, even though he's a West River governor. And so, I mean, it's people is politics, right? And so people involved in the room, that's how it's gonna go down. And so that's one thing I wanna remind you all, as some of these proposals are coming down the line, that, you know, whoever those couple decision makers are on whatever committee that's formed or, you know, board, that's, you know, how this gets played out.
Sure.
If this constitutional amendment passes on the ballot, I think they'll get it on the ballot. If it passes, it's the expert opinion that the cities, counties, municipalities should be very, very, very scared. I'm just passing that along. If you can tell people to research it, if you need me to send you what I know or researched and found out, then we need to promote the fact this is not good for our schools. And if they predict LRC did a fiscal note, and they predict that this proposal will come up $800 million short.
Yes.
And if they do that, they're gonna take from existing programs to make the state whole. So there's a lot of things that are just like big cannonball holes, you know, that there's a better way. So, that's what we're gonna work on.
So Lindy, is there a difference between politicking and governing?
Very much so,
Right.
very much so. I believe if you govern, you're working for the people. That's your ultimate goal, to make the state better, to make the people prosper, to put the right programs in place. It may not be a law, maybe it should be a local policy. I'm not a big law person, I'm not a big government person. I believe in federalism, keep it local and let the people control it. And, yeah, so politicking is you're beating your own drum at any expense. You're furthering your own, you know, agenda.
I find it interesting, 9 of the proposals that came through specifically addressed education. It was attack on K-12 education. They want 0 levies across the board. And on top of that, they're also expecting our state government to have anywhere, I think it was from 3.57% cuts up to 5% cuts, which is not good for South Dakota, period. Education, business-wise, whatever. I do want to talk a little bit more about Governor Roden's proposal. And I like what you talked about, Senator Hulse, about local control, that'd be the county level. But one of the things I want to make sure when that proposal, if it gets to that point, we have to make sure that the language in there still allows our districts in District 30 to receive that levy that the rest of the state, if you're in a county that's not deciding to do the sales tax, right? That we still are able to generate that levy, that same dollar amount that we would have had we just been taking the property tax. Because that will hurt a lot of our districts if you're only going to be able to take what the funding formula says we should get. Because we're above that. Hill City's above it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that language needs to be in there. And again, I'm gonna stress this, that's local control. That's the school boards making the decision on how much we're going to need.
But that's why I like that, is because you all can then go and lobby your county commissioners who you know a heck of a lot better than the Sioux Falls legislator that's screwing this all up and doesn't understand the very, you know, unique circumstances that Custer has with the park and all the federal land and the lack of grant money and the, you know, small amount of private land that you can actually tax and, you know, the big amounts of land or ag district. I mean, there's 5 different things right there that Elk Mountain School District's issue, like, there's a million things that this, like, area specifically, if you could keep it local because it's so oddly specific, and keep that at the county commissioner level, it would make a heck of a lot more sense for them to be deciding some of that and looking at the county budget and then the school budget together, than lawmakers with a mathematical formula that no one can explain or understand.
And Amber, that's a perfect point. I was watching an interview with Linda McMahon today, the federal department head, and she's reorganizing that. And she made a comment today that I thought was really good, that educational decisions should be made by those closest to the child, right? We don't want feds telling the state what to do. And I would ask you to convince your colleagues in here to remember that, the decisions should be made by the smart people in this room. And
I agree.
Well, and you guys know what, capital outlays you need. You guys know, I mean, why should, there's a certain point, I get some of the Sioux Falls schools, they're probably overdoing it on some of the allowances that they've given themselves. And there's a very big problem with the lack of turnout in some of these school district elections, not just in our area, but especially over there, especially with how high of a population that they have. Their turnout is abysmally low. And so again, you're seeing a lot of those, the 9 proposals that were attacked on K-12 come from Sioux Falls legislators that are witnessing that because that's their problem. And so that's why I keep saying local control, go back. But with the current legislature that we're dealing with, that's also a very popular argument. But I think a lot of our colleagues will buy into to talk about giving more local control, take away power from the state. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I do think that if it's the governor's proposal, it will be more successful than an individual legislator's proposal based off of my experience last legislative session. But I hope that the governor, especially now that he's running for re-election, is maybe more amenable to bringing more legislators to the table and asking our opinion, because that was not the case last legislative session. That task force that was formed, it was basically like, okay, you're on the task force, here's the policy, now you're voting for it. Like, there wasn't a lot. I mean, we tried to amend it a little bit.
We got some good points there on it. Very thoughtful points, like, even though he capped it at 3%, which was my original tax bill, he did it as an average per county. That's what we're doing now. That's not gonna work. That's how he kind of watered that down. But then he increased the values for the elderly and disabled, caps and freezes. You know what's really cool about that part? I love this part, is that, it doesn't take much to get excited, is that you go and say, okay, I'm 85 years old, and I need a tax freeze on my house. You can cap it out. They go back to when you turn 65, what was the value of the property then? Whether you lived there then or not. I think that's really cool. So they freeze the taxes at that rate. And so that, I mean, there's some good stuff. And then new growth isn't what new growth used to be. It used to be if you painted your house, if you built a deck, if you built a barn or shed, that's new growth and your taxes would go up. Did away with that. Now new growth is only things that require more public service, like roads, schools, infrastructure, snow plow, whatever. So that would be new growth now. And so you can take care of your property. You can build a deck. You can paint the house, and not without the fear of your property taxes going up. So there's some good parts. There are some good parts. And then got some pushback on some stuff, and that's when he came back in later and said, well, I'll let the counties do like a 1% to offset property taxes, but that hasn't been voted on yet. So, there's a trying there, but there was a point where it kind of got shut down and shut off. But I think we got some good points in there. It was, I thought, 75.
But there were still 21 other individual legislators' bills that could have been potentially considered, and pieces of that brought into that bill that I wish would have happened last year. Instead, we're having to try to do it through a summer study, which again didn't happen. So now we're bringing back the same 21 proposals again, and we've got another governor's bill. So it's like the same story told again with just a different policy. And I just hope that maybe that bill, maybe he'll be more amenable to hearing some or including some of those proposals, because some of them I do think are good ideas, to create separate funds so that we know how much money should be going to the schools, create a separate fund so that we have a specific account that if we do pass any of these tax increases, that it's going into that specific account so that it doesn't get used for anything else. I mean, there's good, I think, governing principles in a lot of these things that aren't necessarily relief, but are setting up the stage so that if we actually are successful at anything, that the stage is set for that to actually go smoothly. But like I said, I really hope that there's a little bit more communication with some of the other individual legislators' ideas, because even your 3%, like that didn't happen. And so it would be nice to also see that in the governor's proposal. So give the counties the power, and then also say, the property taxes can't go up. So then it would force some of maybe the counties that maybe are like, well, we don't want to raise a sales tax because we're a super conservative county commission. Well, you have to, bud, because now we're gonna say that, each individual property, the, rates can't go up, or I'm sorry, the assessment values can't go up more than 3%. So then that would kind of create that pressure to do the right thing for the people.
What I thought was kind of amusing, is that 3 or 4 of those things that came out of the task force were policies. They weren't task force problem solving anything. They're good policies, but they didn't belong coming out of that committee. There's no way that a chair of a task force should have allowed 21 items to come out of a task force. It should be honed down to 2 or 3. So.
And now the executive board met, was it today?
Yeah.
So I haven't had my head in litigation all day, but I haven't looked to see if they actually put the bills together. Majority Leader Carr made some comment about how he was hoping that he could try to put a couple of them together, and so that we have maybe 4 or 5 bills instead of 21. So I'm hoping that the executive board will do their job and be leaders and try to push some of at least the similar ideas down into some manageable bites, and then we can go from there. But I was waiting to kind of put together our little, outside coalition of property tax interested legislators with very differing ideas to kind of meet privately and separately to see if we could all come together until we see what the executive board does, and then go from there.
Other than that, I don't have an opinion.
One thing I am just gonna say about the $1.50 thing is that it really is like the tax the poor tour is what I'm calling it. Let's tour around the state and talk about how we can hurt people that don't own homes more. And as the resident young person in the room, I saw a stat today that the average the average home buying American right now age is 60 years old now. It went up again. And especially as someone who grew up in this area and has a pretty decent job, coming home here is not an easy task for young people. And I know all of you struggle to hire teachers and other folks to get to come to work for your school districts, and it's because young people can't afford it. And so as we continue to hear gripes from, older people that are on fixed incomes and things, you also have to be, aware of how some of those policies affect young people. And so, every time that you reduce somebody's property taxes back to when they were 65, 20 years ago, whatever they aren't paying anymore gets dumped on to everybody else that doesn't get that exemption. And so you have to be really careful that you're not policy making for a few to then hurt everybody else too. So that's one thing that I guess I would just really like to push, is that it is definitely a hard world for young people in home buying, and that affects everything else. And so when you're, taxing people to the extreme that don't own homes to offset people who own homes and have, paid property taxes for a long time, you're kind of picking winners and losers, right? That's, I guess, my soapbox speech there, is to make sure that we're not hurting our weakest members of society or youngest members of society as they're trying to make a living for themselves and chase their American dream, because it is hard these days, in this economy. And if you add, even more to that for the mom that has, single mom that has a few kids going to the grocery store buying $20 worth of bread or whatever, and, some sandwich meat to feed their kids, like that's a lot of money for somebody like that who's not going to Sam's Club and buying $400 worth of groceries because they don't even make $400 to go buy all that all at once. And so we got to think about policy and how it affects people too.
And that is a perfect segue. Trish and I were talking before the meeting about probably not expecting a big funding increase for any entity, but especially public education, right? And I would ask that you advocate that public funding stays in public schools. I think we're maximizing our return on investment. I know a lot of the people in this room have heard these stats, but in the United States with schools that have at least 50% participation in the ACT, which is a nationally normed test. South Dakota's #1, right? I mean, that is pretty awesome.
Yes.
States that still take the Smarter Balance test, there's only like 12 states and 1 territory. South Dakota is #1, technically tied with Idaho, but we're claiming #1. So I cringe a little bit. Sometimes in peer, you hear that we're failing kids and we're failing our communities. And I would ask the advocate the other side of that I get it, session's gonna be tough, money's gonna be limited, but just, we ask that you keep public funding in public schools.
Like I said, I'm a proud graduate of the public school system, loved it. My parents, even if I wanted to get homeschooled, they were gonna send me to school. They were like, go. But, you know, I always try to share that perspective because I think a lot of people appreciate the younger voice in the room that literally just went through the public school system to share that it really wasn't all that bad. Yes, there are ways that you could, you know, make it better, especially when it comes to like career counseling and things like that, to make sure our kids are going off and getting jobs that will give them good careers, because that's what we're all here to do, is make sure that they're productive members of society. But, you know, for me, that was the only option, was a public school. It wasn't like there were other options out there. My parents ran out their own business. They didn't have the time to be schooling me in addition to doing that. And so I always share that perspective. And I think those kinds of stories or like personal testimony is really powerful in peer, especially when it comes from a legislator. And I'm proud to get to do that while representing all of you. So
Hoorah.
more positive note.
And I don't think anybody in here is anti anything. We're just saying that if it's gonna be public funds, then it should be public schools. That's it. I'm beating the dead horse.
So how do you see this federal funding for education coming back from the states? What are you anticipating?
Direct.
Oh, you're talking about by eliminating the Department of Ed? I guess I'm only speculating.
The tax credit that he said last week that he's gonna participate in.
You mean for the scholarship stuff, Amy?
Yeah.
So, what's your thought on that? I mean, the way I read that, and I didn't go real deep into it, in 26, you're gonna get a tax credit for paying taxes. You can take a tax credit of $1,700 to donate to a scholarship, an accredited scholarship.
It's not accredited. Oh.
They-
accredited
no, they-
by the governor, sorry.
Yeah, by the governor, but which also he listed, or private schools.
That hasn't come for a vote either.
No, he signed it into law. Wasn't it? He signed that into law last week.
Part of the one big beautiful bill was that the
Right,
governor-
that's what it comes to. He followed what, 26, 8 states, Blake?
Yeah. Basically, any individual within 300% of the median poverty rate can get a $1,700 tax credit, $3,400 per family. So that, as long as public schools have a scholarship granting foundation, we can accept that money, which I think is a good thing for us. That levels the playing field.
If we have.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I don't know, what can it go towards? Tutoring? I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about it.
Yeah.
Scholarships.
But
Yeah, there's specifics are still coming out, but I know in Hill City, we're working on creating a foundation to be able to accept those. I thought Tony made a good point at that, where he said, you know, for example, my kids go to the Sioux Falls Public School District. I would rather donate $1,700 towards them than towards my federal income taxes.
Yeah.
And I think many South Dakotans will feel that way. So I actually think it's a positive.
But if it'll stay that way, Blake, I mean, it'll be a great thing if that'll happen. But video lottery didn't either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if it really does work to where we can get that back into the public system, it will be great. Instead of funding the pools, because we've seen what happened last year, kind of backdoor some stuff for homeschool, private school stuff, that if we start funding them with our public dollars, we have now created scholarships or a pot of money for scholarships to come coach our students.
I think the other thing you have to be careful with that, and I understand what Lieutenant Governor Hewson was talking about with that, but the scary thing is that it's going to probably create a higher peak of students that are going to leave public education. And that amount that you're gonna be able to raise in your foundation is not gonna come close probably to what you're losing in your ADM each year. And I think again, it might work well for certain schools across the state. I think it's also gonna hurt some of our very small schools that we have in South Dakota.
Well, I think national, and this is actually a topic that I really struggle with, especially when I ran for office, because I think nationally, and I think in the Trump administration and the White House, the rhetoric is public schools suck, and that we should, push everybody to be able to afford private school or charter school and get people out of the public school system, because nationally, or like a majority of public schools around the country are seen as, not teaching ideology or, doing their jobs to just educate and produce productive members of society. They're trying to indoctrinate. That's the rhetoric, right? And so I think that this is partially, something to try to kind of fund the industry of private schools by doing it in a way that seems fair, because the taxpayer gets to decide where they want to donate that money to. But you're right, I think that in South Dakota, it will start funding some of these smaller, coalition, private school, cooperative things, because the rhetoric in the room nationally, and the people that are experts in policy education when it comes to this topic often aren't from states like South Dakota that don't understand that when there isn't a cooperative, or like really the only option is public school, how it hurts good public schools that are doing their jobs. And I haven't really heard anyone be that voice in the room, because it's very unpopular in, sorry to say it, Republican politics, because you're supposed to be a school choice advocate, which like I am a school choice advocate, but when it's at the behest of hurting our public schools, which for our area are the best thing that you could really do, at least in my opinion, for most families, normal families, it's kind of a, it's a losing game, but I struggle with that personally.
Sean Pitzer, business manager at Mountain. So our neighboring district to the west is Wyoming. And this might be somewhat what he's referencing. So in Grand Wyoming's Wyoming, let them do their thing. But if you see your neighbor making a mistake, learn from it to save yourself from making a mistake. Wyoming legislature last June approved $7,000 for anybody that would like to homeschool their students. Very loose standards with that, very loose accountability. So Newcastle, as an example, is in the Newcastle paper here a week ago. Their enrollment a year ago was 928, I believe. Their enrollment last fall, 711.
Ooh.
So 25% or whatever that comes to drop in enrollment, and they feel a lot of that is directly proportionate to that $7,000. Now granted, it's genius, if you're looking at dollars and cents, genius on behalf of the state, because Newcastle, their tuition rate is like $18,600 a kid a year. So $7,000 is a lot cheaper than what Cheyenne sends up. So they're saving themselves a fortune on cutting that check. However, huge detriment to the school system there in Western County. So I'm with her. I think it's a great idea, but I think it has to be looked at very, very cautiously, and the appropriate accountabilities have to be in place, or I think it bites us as public schools.
The only way I think I'd be in favor of that is if we set up a system like HSA accounts, where there are specifically approved expenditures that they pay for and then have to submit their receipts. I'm not gonna hand somebody a check for $40,000 and assume they're gonna teach their children. That to me is just irresponsible. If it can have really tight guidelines, they have to be really tight though. And then that way, if they wanna come and do 3 classes in Custer, they're gonna pay you for them. So as long as you have a good product, you have nothing to worry about, and we have a good product. Our education system in our district, thank God, is one of the best, and I appreciate all of you for that. It takes a lot of hard work, but the results are great. But I think it has to be a really tight, locked down system in order for it not to affect the public schools that way. And I'm not gonna give, John Smith his vacation to Ireland while his kids stay behind with the babysitter or something, it's, there
Well,
has
it's
to
not
be
even-
accountability.
It's not even that level of accountability either, like I've watched Washington politics get involved in this where there's big lobbies behind private school, and charter schools right now, and so that's what some of this is being, like, the president got elected on a lot of these campaign talking points, and so when you look at, $7,000 for 200 kids, that's a lot of money somebody's making, running a private school. And some of these like more virtual schools, there's not a lot of overhead, so like somebody's making a lot of money out of this, and it's at the behest of the kids that are left at Newcastle or, whatever other school that lose, like Edgemont. I know if Edgemont loses a couple kids, that's it, like Edgemont school's over with. And so I worry about that a lot, and think about that a lot when we're talking about school choice policies. I just want to let you know that I do,
Well, I would encourage you just to do, I've heard Dr. Graves say multiple times, and it's really frustrating that competition basically is good for business. Well, I would argue, Walmart hasn't been good for our little towns, for downtown businesses. But more than that, I wish he would show me the research, the data saying that it does improve schools, or that there's great success in a charter school or in a private school or a homeschool. There's just not that data out there. I've been looking for it. And so unless he has it, I wish that I could see that data that says that it improves schools and that the competition would improve our public schools, because I don't think it would. I think ultimately, especially in our rural area, we simply don't have enough customers to spread them out. So.
Well, I think we all like to compete.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to competition, but make sure that it's same.
It's fair.
Yeah,
that it's same
if there's
thing.
accountability for public schools, put that same accountability there, and then we'll really have a
Then
true
we'll-
picture.
and I guess I just struggle like ideologically like with this, because I think that in some ways, if you don't like what the public service is offering, then you have to pay for that on your own. Like, that's at least my idea of this when I was growing up, and that was one of the reasons why my parents were like, well, if you wanna be homeschooled, like, we hate to tell you this, but we can't afford that, so like, get your, homeschool. But it's not like, if you don't like the police service that, Custer Sheriff's offering you, then you hire private security service. You don't ask the government to pay for you to have extra security, right? So if you don't like the school that is offered with your property taxes that you're paying, then you want additional fancy or different teachings or whatever it is, then you go and pay for it on your own. That's and so I struggle with some of this, that it's supposed to, and I get the arguments too, and I'm not saying that, I'm, the kind of person that maybe one day I will homeschool my kids because I want to take them all over the place while I'm traveling or whatever. I'm nothing against homeschool, but I just really struggle with the fact that then it hurts the kids that are left behind, that their parents are working or running businesses or whatever it is, that your personal situation, that the school that is there for you now is hurt because, of policy. And so it's probably not popular, but I don't care.
But I also go to signing into law that we now have to accept every homeschooler for a sport.
Mhm.
And that we get nothing reimbursed on, and I know it's probably minimal per student for the ones that do come, but we are not able to, so how do we get that changed? And I know the idea is, get them in here, get them making friends, whatever the case is, and next thing you know, they're gonna come in, they're gonna wanna join. Well, I'm here to tell you, you might have 20%. Not very much for what you're putting into that. What you give that kid, I guess, per se, that athlete or whatever it might be. Just like Sean said, 200 people out of Newcastle, don't know if state of Wyoming has that same deal. How many of them 200 kids come back to play sports to use their co-curriculars? Right here, our budget is 800,000 on the co-curricular. We have a few that come in, it's probably not that much per student. But if we had 100 kids that come in and use that, that's a lot that we get no reimbursement for.
Doesn't Hill City require they have to take 2 classes?
Can't no more, state law, you gotta accept them.
Yeah,
I thought
I
it
think
was a
that was
great
2 or
idea.
3 years ago
Yeah.
that changed. Yep.
And I know we had always let them come.
Sure.
That was kind of in our policy, just let them come. But you're right, but it was a couple of years ago, the state signed it into law. And you don't get the joys of asking them if they're passing their classes or not, or if they're 17, 18, 19, or 20. They just accept you as you are, come on. And take some kid's spot. that's here, using our facility every day, paying taxes, doing stuff, and they take that spot. And then they walk back out the door, nothing.
I liked it before, because they had to invest in the school
Absolutely.
to play on the football team or be in the band, or, you know.
I didn't know
Just
that was different.
Just don't walk in and be the quarterback. I mean, that's not fair to me, but
Well,
maybe
not,
we can get that changed.
yeah, that hurts. I mean, this may be like a little tedious, but like that even hurts. I think I'm a big band nerd. I'm a sports nerd. I'm in the band room, so memories are coming back right now. But I mean, if you have kids that can practice their instrument multiple hours a day and they're coming in and they're getting the college scholarships and stuff that the kids that are in public school aren't always getting. And so it kind of goes to that kind of stuff. That's the way I think.
But even if they would come and use our band, Amber, or our choir room, at least we're gonna get a touch of that tax money if they still wanna come play basketball, volleyball, golf, whatever it might be, badminton. If they come and take a class, at least we get a small piece of the pie.
Not only that, they should have to meet the same requirements our students are meeting.
Amen.
I agree, but we don't get to ask.
No, I
There's
agree
no
with that,
accountability for it.
but
None.
there's no accountability whatsoever there. I mean, it's just.
I have seen families that have the ultimate worst of the worst of the worst homeschoolers and the very best of the best that have been homeschooled, that I do business with.
But just like Amber said, he could sit there and play basketball all day long, never touch a book and come in here and play basketball and.
And get recruited and get the college scholarship. I mean, that's frustrating to me.
Because world history is, we studied French candy today. I literally had somebody tell me that one time as a homeschool parent.
Really?
World history class today, they asked me while I was doing some work, would you like some candy? We got it from France. And I said, really? Yep, history class on candy from France. Oh, thanks.
I got one for you.
What?
The floor of the house, you're sitting there, two desks behind me, it's a gentleman, a representative, and up in the gallery are his 3 kids and his wife. They're homeschooling government, and they are running around the whole, and then we have these old fashioned like phone booths.
Yep.
You go in there, you come up, they're sitting there watching their iPads all day. I'm thinking, what part of this is government? But we're doing government for the Capitol, and
So
don't get me started, it's a pet peeve.
Can I take a minute? Would it be okay if I bend your ear for a couple minutes? We don't get, so Lisa always says cite your sources. So I made copies for your, if you're struggling to sleep. So how that, I only made 10, so you gotta
I
show.
like people that come with paper.
What? I'm citing my sources. So one, thank you for coming, thank you for having us. We're the, if not one of the smallest districts in the state of South Dakota that is still independent of state aid. There's 5 of us, Custer, Lee Deadwood, Hoban, Fort. That's it. It's a struggle, and we need all the help we can get, just like any district, anywhere in the state. And so, but I guess to lobby on behalf of Elk Mountain District, which in effect affects Fall River and Custer and everybody else, especially those who are independent. So the top little bit is just, and so some of this is dated because in order to compile the numbers, I had to go with some of the 2024 stuff.
Yeah, the other stuff is happening.
But pretty much the school district's Bible on funding is the first 10 pages. Senate Bill 51 tells us what our mill levy structures is, what our reimbursements are, special ed, capital outlay, so forth, so on, as set forth by the state. At the end of that, you'll find a sheet from Wendy Simler. This is the graduation of the mill structure set forth by the bill each year. So what you see is each year, the mill gets less and less and less across the board. Okay, that's fine. So my question was, why is that? Well, based on DOR and reports from the floor, is that the consensus of the legislature is most all the schools take state aid, most of that back end will be filled. So we can give property tax relief by decreasing the mill structure that the schools can request, because they're all gonna come back with their handout to make up the difference with state aid. So for those of us that don't take state aid, we don't get that option. So in a sense, we kind of get punished because we're running a balanced budget that comes in under the state formula, but yet we can't make up that difference. So behind that is Elk Mountain's, their Elk Mountain profile. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, that's 23 payable 24. So if you compare those numbers back to the 20 payable 24 on here, you'll see a variance in the mill structure. So I would lobby to you guys that I think this is looked at strictly from the big school, big state aid formula view, and not those of us that are trying to maintain. For Elk Mountain, we cannot take state aid, and we will not, for the simple reason, the two things that keep us from the threat of consolidation is not taking state aid, and the 25-mile rule. And our constituents, due to geography, want to stay independent, want a local board. They don't want to send anybody through Hell's Canyon to come over here. So that has us pretty well confined on what resources we have to make that work. However, the problem is, any other time what you have, so I'll get to that variance, but you can see there's a variance in the middle, what we received versus what we could take. Well, the problem is, behind that sheet, you'll see Elk Mountain's tax payable 24, district valuation 92 million. In 24, our max in general that we could take was 381,000, significantly under all the other districts here, but 381,000. The problem is if you look at 2025, our valuation dropped 89,000 because of changes in policy based on county valuation. They had a quick ramp up when they did a massive 65 to 85 plus reevaluate all the properties. Then the last couple of years, we've had this backslide trying to make a correction. Understand that appeases taxpayers, totally for it. The problem is we have a declining mill as set by the state, at the same time, a declining valuation. So in our district, I got to slice $40,000 off of last year's budget to come into current of 330. This coming year, I just got the sheet on that. This coming year, I get to slice another 10. That's 320 off our general fund because of the same thing, a declining mill and this fluctuating valuation.
Did the evaluation go down again for your?
This coming year, it actually tickled back up just a pinch. So it's for us, I don't know, I don't have a solution, so maybe I'm just complaining. But the graduating down on the mill is definitely a hit for our district, especially on years when we see declining valuations. And like I said, over that period, it's 50,000, which is huge. Which, another one that I would like to lobby, this is more of a commissioner based, but I think Custer feels the same impact, I'm sure Fall River. Behind that, what you're gonna see is about 4 or 5 pages of real fine print. So there was a lawsuit or something that went on the tax deed situation here 2-3 years ago. The state advised all the counties to shut that down, as far as selling tax receipts, selling tax liens. Custer County was one of those districts that did that. So what happened is, if you look on the very last page toward the bottom, you'll see a number there of 167,000. What this report is it is a report on unpaid taxes or taxes that are in arrears just for Elk Mountain District since they've killed the tax deed sales. So bear in mind, my budget next year is $320,000, and I've got $167,000 in unpaid taxes sitting out there in no man's land. I mean, that's half the budget. That's half my numbers. That's the variance. If you do the math and you take the difference between what we asked and what we got, that year alone was a $78,000 hit to my district because of unpaid taxes. Well, that's pretty significant when your entire budget is $378,000. That's a huge hit. And then Lisa has to get really creative on programming in order to meet those students' needs. So I guess on behalf of Elk Mountain, please take back, lobby for reinstatement of a tax, some sort of accountability on the taxes, so that those are staying current. And I don't have a solution, but definitely visit this downward graduation of the mill structure, because yes, there's only 5 of us in the state that don't take state aid. But we're trying awful hard to run on a balanced budget and keep it under what our taxpayers need to pay, so. So that's my 2 cents.
I think that's one of the
Thank
things
you.
that's contributed to the assessment values being a little inflated too, is because as the mill continues to go down, they have to figure out some way to make it up, and whether that's purposeful or not, I don't know, but you know, once you see that the mill is continuously going down, you know, it's a teeter-totter, one side of the equation's gotta go up, and so I, for different reasons, have spotted that as a problem as well.
But on your sellable tax bills, do you think you can get that reversed on the state level? Because the federal out of Minnesota was the one that brought that down. So therefore they quit selling them, because if you buy one, obviously, and Bill or Fred or Sammy down the street here decides not to pay it, and all of a sudden we get hyperinflated like we did a few years ago, and you buy it and you make 400,000 on this, and they now federal law, or in case was one in Minnesota, that money goes back. So even if they're selling them, people really aren't just racing to the door to buy them anymore because they don't want to. And the ones I know that do have them, they're just waiting it out. I mean, they're not pushing them people out of their properties. They're not nothing. They're just writing a rent bill until they get it above what it's even worth, and then sell it so nobody gets nothing to get out from underneath them because they're stuck with them. So can we even change that on a state level, being that the federal precedent's been set? I don't know.
My theory, I don't really care, just some form of accountability.
Correct,
So,
I agree. I agree that it comes back in.
Yeah.
But if the people that have been buying them, or companies or whatever, that have been doing it as business and they're not looking at it no more, what do we do?
Okay, so 2 questions. Do you know what year that case was decided in, 2023?
23, I believe.
And then the answer to your question is, when a federal court interprets a state law, we can come back and say, federal court, we're the state lawmakers, we want to change that law. And then once we change it again, then the, same litigants can come back, or the
Sure.
court can then say, somebody else can sue over how we amend it, and that's kind of the relationship between the 2 branches. But this is the first I've heard of this issue, and I'll go review that case and see if there's something that we can do about taking the power back from the federal court in Minnesota, from the 8th Circuit.
Yeah,
That sounds right up my alley.
Because they legitimately did. I mean, they sold the tax bill and somebody turned around and made like 300,000 on this property, and them.
And it was a Custer County case?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, it was in Minnesota, but it set federal precedent, so when all of this come down,
8th Circuit, okay.
everybody decided at that point, we're not selling these no more. Because we don't want the hassle of it, so they froze them. But yeah, so basically, if there was 150,000 owed on it, that all got paid off. Yeah, you got your 10% of the money you invested, but if there was 100,000 left over, that person, for not paying his taxes for 5 years or whatever, and it comes back on it, just got his taxes paid, got everything paid back up, and he made money. Yeah. New form of welfare. What else you got there,
I was
questions?
gonna say, I was like, did we bore you to death with the case law talk?
I just have one thing to mention. South Dakota Case Executive Board, that's the Council for Special Education Administrators, are meeting tomorrow. And one of the things they'd like to consider is a bill to come out to put the category of other health impairment into a level 2 funding. Right now it's in level 1. Just because a lot of our kids that we're getting that have other health impairment are requiring a considerable amount of behavioral supports, and the funding is just not there, where if you put it in level 2, you get, so level 1 funding, you get a percentage of your ADM, and then you get that times a certain number. Level 2 is if you have like 10 students with, right now it's cognitive disability and emotional disability, you get that amount of money per student. where other health impairment's in level 1 and it's a percent. And we're seeing more and more of other health impairment disabilities that are requiring that, you know, a lot more behavioral supports, and just having that move to level 2 will help that budget to support those kids, so.
So that's proposed legislation that's gonna
No,
come out, or?
we hope someone considers that
Okay,
as a bill coming forward, yeah.
and does the committee have someone in mind to carry that legislation, or are they working with a legislator yet, or?
I don't think so, I'm not sure on that, I just talked to him today, I'm not part of the executive board, but I talked to him today because I knew you were coming, and that was one of the things that they said they would like to have somebody consider a bill to move the other health impairment to a level 2 category.
I am your legislator, and you should have Senator Souter carry that legislation. She's a school administrator, and
Okay.
she's incredible. Either her or,
I do, Representative Mulder. He's in all the medical behavioral
yeah,
field.
in the House. And then in the Senate, either her or Senator Nelson, but they're both school like administrators. And while I agree and I will vote for that legislation, they would be better to carry the bill and
Okay.
explain that because they work in the school context. And so it'll be coming from a better place if their names are
Oh,
on it.
and I'm sure they'll have people they'll reach out to, but.
Yeah.
Just so if you hear it coming down the pipe.
Good to know.
I'm behind that one.
Yeah.
But Brian Mulder is amazing. He's a bulldog. He is, he'll let go.
I could go all night.
What do you got that's important that we didn't touch on?
Well, just a little bit, what's your guys', do you have any information coming from others, or have you heard anything about capital outlay and getting rid of some of the flexibility with capital outlay funding?
I haven't.
I mean, there's the recommendations from the summer study task force. I think one of them, from Senator Peterson, I think one of hers, talks about that. Cause that's kind of one of her attacks is the, elimination or suppression of opt-outs, and then, capital outlay as well. But the biggest thing for me that I don't agree with that philosophy is that like the more that you limit schools, the more that they have to opt out. And so in a lot of these areas, or a lot of these proposals are to try to limit that from happening, but what that's gonna eventually cause is other third and fourth order ramifications that I don't think we're really thinking about. And that was one of the reasons why several of the proposals actually died in the Senate from Senator Peterson, but I haven't heard other than the one proposal that talks about it. And again, that all goes back to like, what does the executive board do? What are these potential bills gonna look like? Because they're just recommendations right now. There's no actual bill number or real legislation. So the 21 ideas, this is what they essentially are, may never actually grow legs, which for many of them would be great, but.
But we can research it.
Okay. And then have you heard anything, I think, last week, I think the Department of Health, put a proposal together, an application as part of the Big Beautiful Bill, to address rural health. And within that, I think states across the United States are trying to address some of the needs that we have in dealing with, mental health of our students. Have you guys heard anything from other legislators about that application? And is there anything in it that's impacting education?
I haven't heard anything from other legislators.
No, we're just starting to see the bills filter through LRC and get posted for us to read, and it's just starting that process right now. But I haven't heard anything other than I had a discussion with the mayor of Custer about the nursing home, trying to fit into those fundings, but not in the context of our children in education and mental health issues. So. And they don't fit. They don't.
I did talk with the guy that is in charge of SDAHO, which is the South Dakota Healthcare Association. Tim Rave, and he's a former legislator about this application, because one of the things that I'm really focused on being Hot Springs is the VA hospital and the mental health care services that obviously could be provided there for veterans. But like that also could be something that community care could provide down there too, depending on how many people that they could house at the DOM, both in VA doctors and private doctors. What that looks like, I don't know, but that was kind of one of my ideas. Like, we have this big facility and we should be taking care of, homeless and, suicidal veterans in this facility that is sitting empty. We just need the humans to put in it. And so how can we use that to pay for mental health care providers to come to smaller communities? And then that would also hopefully increase some of the federal funding that you get from having, more operational federal facilities that I know have declined since I was in middle school in Hot Springs. And so that's the extent of it, not really on the school topic, but that's the extent of the discussion that I had about it. But I know that there are a lot of people talking about using those funds to do kind of like what we do with law students and med students, but for other professions such as mental health care, physical therapist, rehabilitation, those kinds of careers that require, medical careers that still require a lot of education but aren't a JD or an MD, but they're just as expensive. Pathways to do rural practice and things, and to create kind of a Dakota, what do they call that? Dakota's Promise type fund with some of that funding that would be an endowment that would continuously make money for itself to be a continuing program for those kinds of jobs. But that's, again, just a pipe dream, just discussions and ideas that I've heard that may impact having more mental health care professionals in small towns. So no promises, just that was my discussion.
Yeah, it's a little bit, the large school superintendents have talked about this, and we were made aware of the application, and it was our understanding that there's going to be specific things that they're to address some of our needs in education, and it's my understanding that there was not. And again, I think it's an example of when the wrong people are at the table. There should have been educators at that table with that application, helping to design it. One other thing I want to mention too is with the juvenile justice system, it has failed, incredibly failed in South Dakota. We have a lot of kids throughout South Dakota that have very high needs, and it needs to be taken care of. But what is really frustrating is the fact that every year, I think it's the last 3 years, there's been $2 to $3 million or more that have been left in that should be going to support our kids. And I'm guessing it probably gets put back into what? General fund or the reserves?
Well, it depends on how it's earmarked. So it's like special ed, you can't touch it, right?
Right.
So if they designated it or locked it up, I just have to go find out if it's general funds or not.
Okay.
That is one issue that I have heard a lot of legislators talking about. They've done a lot of tours and different things, and I haven't heard of what's going to come out of all this pomp and circumstance, but juvenile justice overall is a big topic amongst many of my colleagues. And then separately, I was on a national conference of state legislators. I think they call it a task force, but essentially it's legislators from states all across the nation that they bring them together to talk about juvenile justice policy. And basically what I've learned from that task force is that you have to be really creative in rural areas and, have really great community partnerships to try to create creative solutions that work for your community. And I just don't think that we do a great job of that. Similarly to the issues that, plague us with property taxes is same problem West River with, Sioux Falls getting a lot of that funding and attention that we need. And it's such a disjointed state with West River and East River that we just don't get the funding that we need. But yeah, I agree with the healthcare application thing though as well, that we didn't really ever get to comment on it. I mean, we heard about it, it was announced, there was those community conversations around the state. I went to one of them, but I was in the room just as a nonprofit leader was sitting right next to me, and it was not anything that we got to even provide comment on, let alone, try to come to you guys and ask for comment either. So I've been really frustrated with that process, given the amount of life-changing funds that that is. And I'm not really sure if like who's writing the grant really should be the person writing the grant. From what I've understood, it's, they should have really gotten somebody from like DC that's like a very expert grant writer to do that, and I don't really know if it's gonna be handled appropriately, but I'm only one person, and I wish that I had a staff of 20 people to be able to track down all these little issues, but Trish and I try. No one's a staff.
You didn't try it.
Chip's just a staff sitting back.
I was gonna say, mine's sitting in the car, he wouldn't even come inside, so.
That would have brought
I dangled Skogan for dinner in front of him, so that's what we're doing after this.
Anybody else have questions?
Just call us, be in touch with us, come to our school.
And
Come to our music program, you know, yeah.
also the same thing goes to, I mean, if you don't have my cell phone number before you walk out of this room, come get my cell phone number. Email is really difficult during legislative session. I don't know if any of you know that. We get like thousands of emails, and so if we don't answer your email right away, also all of my 5 different email accounts all come into this thing, and so it's really easy to get lost, especially with my like day job. With the number of emails that I get. So if you're not getting an answer from me and it's urgent, text me and leave me a voicemail and I will answer you. But like the private cell phone thing, I want everyone in this room to feel like you can pick up the phone and tell whether it's a small issue or a big issue. The phone works both ways, and sometimes we have 10 different things that we're trying to juggle plates, and if we're not being responsive enough to you, like let us know, because you are the people that are community leaders that I, just as Trish has listened to you, I want to, build those relationships as well.
We can do it.
We can do it.
Texts are great too, because I can answer them.
Yeah, texts are really great during legislative session, even in committees, if it's an education bill in front of us or something that or on the floor, we're thinking about it. I look at my phone a lot while we're sitting there listening to testimony. So if you're listening, back in Edgemont and you're like, wow, what they just said was so incorrect. Like as that's coming in, it's so helpful. I've had the sheriff in Pennington County do that to me, and the judiciary committee all the time, like, hey, ask him this question, and like text me about it. I mean, but it's nice to have the experts in the room be the ones feeding us that kind of information, because we can't be experts at everything. You can't know everything. And I want to know what you guys think, because you are the ones doing this. We want to represent you the best we can. So don't feel like that's inappropriate to do.
And go ahead, Tim.
You sure?
I was just gonna tell everybody to encourage them. If you guys ever get a chance to go sit through testimony sometime, when you're looking down through there and something that really intrigues you, go there and just sit there and just listen to some of that goes on both sides. I mean, it is amazing.
You did a great job.
I was there last year. We worked on a little bill. We got it through, and my buddies all looked at me and said, do we go? And I said, I don't know if we're supposed to. And there was only like 7 of us in the room. But the stuff that come up after that was so incredible to listen to the people that called in and back and forth and the stuff, because it really makes you think as a taxpayer, why would Game Fish and Parks fund that with your tax dollar?
Exactly.
Why would this happen with your money? Why would this happen with the week checkoff plan? Why does this happen? When it's really your stuff that you guys should have a say in. So, and I know it's time out of your day to go do that, but if something like that ever intrigues you, go spend the day.
There's only one requirement. You have to let me know you're coming.
Yeah.
Because then we can, tour you around and get you to the right place.
But it means so much when an individual person from your area especially comes and is there to lobby on behalf of something. That's probably one of the most powerful statements that you can make, is when individual community members show up to lobby for something that, to take the time out of your precious day to go and do that is probably the most powerful political action that you can take. And it means a lot to other legislators too, even if you're not their constituent, to have a person physically there in the chair saying something to them. So thanks for doing this.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Nobody fell asleep. Except maybe Bobby.
One last thing, and I'll let you guys go and let you close the meeting out, but I do want to lead with this because I think it's important. My wife, Ron, and I come from North Central, South Dakota, Mulvers Pollock, that's where I was superintendent before. And I said this earlier today to another group. We are blessed to be in this area of the state. Besides the beauty of it, we're also blessed with great people in this area. And one of the things I'm here to tell you is that our educational system is not broke. Can we get better? Absolutely. But I can tell you that all these people that are at this table right now all have great confidence in the people that they have working in their school systems. We are so fortunate to have the teachers, the community leaders, the administrators, the school boards that we have. Because we are getting it done. But we're going to need your guys' support more than ever, I think, in period this year on local control. I mean, these people have all run for their positions. I don't want to run for superintendent, by the way, either. I'd win it, but I don't want to. But just know that we have great people here and we want to keep them here
Yes.
in this area. So thank you for coming tonight. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. These types of conversations are what make our jobs easier, so thank you.
Or harder.
Well, harder if you give us more stuff to do, but it's nice to talk to you face to face to explain to you really what's going on in the background of kind of some of these complicated issues, because it's a lot more complicated than even what's said in committee testimony, so.
That's just the surface.
Yeah.
My husband grew up in Eureka.
I know I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my good superintendent friends is from Eureka.
See?
Wise Mantles.
Wise
Wise Mantles?
I haven't been there for about 10 years now.
10 years?
Oh, that's better than Morris.
10 times what?
That's better than Morris.
Yeah.
On the follow-up, what Amy said, if anybody is the other side of the canyon, feel free to stop in and have fun, visit us. And, yeah, anytime, 4 days a week, pop in.
And
Don't do what
Thursday?
Dr. Graves did, he came out to visit, he got lost, ended up in Dewey.
Oh, no.
And we were just sure he was gonna come back and just shut us down. And he went off on, he saw cowboys moving cows, elk, and just loved it.
Day-to-day life.
Like,
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
it was a good detour.
Yeah, but no, anybody come on out, give us a visit, so.
That's great.
Any other questions for our two legislators? I really appreciate you guys coming. This is always entertaining for me, whether we're at Hill City or here. It's good to talk to you guys and actually see you face to face and what faces.
Doing a great job.
Yep. Appreciate it. Trish actually remembers me.
Right here.
First time
I was gonna say, I was like,
First time I
trusting you
got to
for
meet
that,
you. No, first time
so.
I met you, so it's all good. But I appreciate it, so if there's nothing else, need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Keith, thank you, Brandy. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
So if I oppose, I have to say yeah.
You don't get it.
I'm just so used to doing it. Yeah.
Same sign. I said yes.